I believe this is the ninth team that I am featuring in the Moving Forward series, which means that we are now down to just two teams left that is still in playoff contention. And next week, of course, I will do the remaining two episodes of the Moving Forward series in the regular season. And then when the playoffs comes, I will still do the Moving Forward series, but it's only for teams that is eliminated. And that's when the format does get a little bit different. And you will see it when we reach that point. But one team that is not going to be there to fight for playoff contention heading into Decision Day is the Whitecaps, who is now out of the playoffs after drawing against LAFC. Well, technically they were sort of eliminated when they coming into that match. The only reason why they were mathematically eliminated was because of the goal differential and how they need like kind of an insane goal differential to maybe stay alive another week for Decision Day. But no, unfortunately, the Whitecaps didn't do that, and their season is pretty much over. And so far, heading into the last game of the season, they have a record of 12 wins, 8 draws, and 13 losses. They have 44 points this season, which is kind of high for a team that got eliminated. I mean, I think if I remember last season, I think the Quakes only got like 39 or something like that. But 44 is quite high for a team to get eliminated from the playoffs. But certainly, I think the Western Conference this season has certainly got much more stronger than it was last season. In terms of goals scored, they scored 52 goals this season, but they allowed 66 this season. And as I will mention about what went wrong this season, that defense gave up the fourth most goal in MLS. I mean, that defense was really, really bad. But the goal differential, of course, is minus 14, which is also very ugly kind of goal differential and one of the worst in the league. And in terms of the top goal scored this season, Kai Kamara with 14 goals this season, Christian Teixeira with 8, Alphonso Davies with 6, Jordi Reyna with 6. And this is not a mistake, Whitecaps fan. And I know when you see this, Whitecaps fan think that no way Brek Shea somehow made it on your list of top goal scorer. But it's true. He actually did make the list. He actually scored 3 goals this season. Now, I remember he had 2 goals earlier in the season, but I don't recall what was his third goal actually. But it's quite hard to believe how somehow he still made it onto the top goal scorer list, because if you guys don't know, Brek Shea is kind of a meme for Vancouver Whitecaps fan, and Whitecaps fan always hated him because of the fact that he's lazy and also just cannot finish, even though you can put a ball 3 yards in front of goal and he somehow still find a way to not score that goal, as we have seen a couple of times this season. But at least he has 3 goals, and somehow he find on my top goal scoring list and find himself on this board. But in terms of the top assist leader, Jordi Reyna with 11, which is tied with Alphonso Davies, who also had 11 assists. Felipe with 7 assists this season, Kai Kamara with 6, and Marcel de Jong with 3. What went wrong for the Whitecaps this season? Well, they were too inconsistent. And I think this is probably the biggest reason of what went wrong with this team this season, is because they look very inconsistent. And it's not an inconsistent in what I'm saying that they sometimes win a game and then draw a game and then lost a game and then win again, that kind of inconsistency. But it's more like they go on a stretch where they have a good run, maybe like 5 games unbeaten, and then they would, after that 5-game unbeaten streak, they would have a bad stretch where they either lose 5 in a row or just go winless 5 games. I mean, they're just too inconsistent in terms of different stretch. There's just times where the Whitecaps look very good, and then there's just time where the Whitecaps just look absolutely garbage. And I think they were just too inconsistent enough that they just could not make it to the playoffs. I mean, when the Whitecaps were coming down the stretch, they knew that they had to make sure they got themselves into the playoff position, because they know they had a daunting schedule coming down the stretch, which unfortunately they didn't. And I think that might be also another thing that I might add in terms of what went wrong, is that they did not position themselves to be in the playoffs before they have to play all those tough teams in September, and they got paid for it with the fact that they weren't above the red line, and give them some breathing room. The fact that if they do lose to all those good teams, at least they will still be in contention of getting that sixth spot. The other thing that went wrong for them this season is that they have no attacking creativity. And I think besides Alphonso Davies, that is just pretty much carrying that team in terms of attacking creativity, there is just no attacking creativity whatsoever from this team. I mean, this team, like last season and probably the one previous, this team basically hide the fact that they have no attacking creativity just because they go on the break and that they just play long balls. I mean, that's not a bad tactics to use, and it certainly worked for them last season when they got themselves in the playoffs and got themselves in the third spot. But the problem is that if you keep playing this counter-attacking style, and when you keep trying to hide the fact that you just don't have any kind of attacking creativity from your midfield, eventually teams are gonna find out, and teams are just gonna sit back on the Whitecaps and just kind of like bunker down and hope and see if the Whitecaps can break them down. And I'll tell you what, 9 out of 10 times this season when teams trying to do that, the Whitecaps had no answer to try to break down this team. And that is something that they probably got to do in terms of the off season, which is they need to find a creative player, especially that Davies is not going to be with this team next season and he's moving on to Bayern Munich. And then, of course, the third thing that went wrong for the Whitecaps this season is the amount of goals that they conceded, which is 66. Big part of the fact that they concede that many goals is because they had some games where they concede like 6 goals, 4 goals. I think they concede like 4 goals 3 times this season. And then, of course, that 6-0 infamous disaster against Sporting KC, where they pretty much just lost the plot in that game too, because they had 2 men sent off. So that kind of plays a big part in terms of the goal differential, or not the goal differential, but the goals allowed that they have this season. But still, it's no excuse the fact that they concede the 4 most goal in MLS, and you would say that this defense is kind of decent. I mean, this defense, they do have a good leadership, that is Kendall Watson in that defense, but unfortunately, he's the only guy that I really think that you could say he is the rock on that defense. And when he has to do everything on his own, sometimes it works when you're playing against a team that is not very threatening, but sometimes when he has to do it all by himself, teams always find a way to trying to not play the ball toward his area, because Kendall Watson can't just cover the whole field. That's why you also have other defenders to help him in certain spot, and when those defenders are not helping him in those certain spot, teams always target those spots, and that's how the Whitecaps just look absolute garbage in the defense. And in other words, basically Kendall Watson can't just do it on his own. Like, you can't just have a one-man back line and think that you're not going to concede so many goals, even if he is just a world-class kind of defender, which I'm not saying Kendall Watson is a world-class defender, but he's certainly one of the best we have here in MLS. But yeah, what went right for the Whitecaps this season? So at least Alphonso Davies has pretty much helped you this season, and as I said many times so far this season, there's just been a couple of times where Davies is the only reason why this Whitecaps team went this deep into the season of still being in playoff contention. I mean, how many games we have seen him just able to rescue the Whitecaps from the jar of defeat, And even last week against LAFC, the way that he absolutely ripped apart that defense, that just shows you a lot about his emergence and how he is probably the best wonder kid we have ever seen in MLS. And I don't think that's a good thing to say, because remember the last time when we had a incredible wonder kid called Freddie Adu, and you saw how that went out. So hopefully Alphonso Davies won't be like that, and that move to Bayern is definitely a huge kind of step forward, and pretty much almost like a leap of faith that Davies is taking in terms of going to Bayern Munich. And I'm assuming maybe he'll probably get some minutes in the cup competition, but he's definitely not gonna get some minutes in terms of actual Bundesliga play. So maybe he'll get loaned out. But at the end of the day, at least the Whitecaps is gonna get plenty of that moolah money that they needed. And I'm pretty sure they're going to have to spend that, not just to find a replacement for Davies. And I think maybe that is something that I really hope the Whitecaps won't just solely focus, which is just simply replace Davies. Because Davies is just incredible. He's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of wonder kid that you'll ever had. And it's obviously going to be tough to try to replace them. And right now, this team has so many problems that I think they can't just use that money all just to get a superstar kind of midfielder that can replace Davies. And yeah, that's the money that you need to spend. They need to spend that money not only on the midfield but also in the defensive end. And also, they might have just found their replacement for Fredy Montero. And for those of you that don't know who Fredy Montero is, he used to be the striker for the Whitecaps before, I believe, in the early part of this season or last off season, he left the club to join Sporting Lisbon, and they were trying to search a replacement for him. And I think Kai Kamara is that answer. I mean, 14 goals this season. There's been at times where when they do not have Kai Kamara, they just does not look very good going forward, which is why maybe that is another thing that they might need to spend that Alphonso Davies kind of dollar. And from now on, I'm just going to call it the Alphonso Davies dollar, because that's what all the transfer money come from Vancouver. I think they'll just spend that dollar on finding maybe another striker that can not only take some pressure off of Kai Kamara, but also could be a little bit of a depth piece of, if Kamara does went down, he can of course step up and at least maybe contribute half of those goals. But moving forward for the Whitecaps, obviously the biggest thing moving forward for them is they have a new manager. I know I said that they need to use that money to find replacement for Davies, and actually, you know what? Since that I just said that they shouldn't use all that money on Davies, I'm just actually gonna erase that, because I think what they need to use those money is just basically finding some players that can have that attacking creativity that they've been lacking for the last couple of seasons, and also just find a couple of new defenders. I mean, 66 goals conceded. When you concede that many goals, you know that your defense is bad, and you know that there are guys that shouldn't be part of your team in terms of protecting just your back line, pretty much. And then obviously the most important thing, as I mentioned, is that they're going to get a new manager, because Carl Robinson is no longer the manager of the Whitecaps. And there's been a lot of rumor that Dos Santos, that is Mark Dos Santos, not Jonathan or Gio Dos Santos, the Dos Santos brother, but it looks like MDS is going to be coming to the Whitecaps. Originally, MDS was heavily linked with the Quakes, and that was something that I was really hoping that will happen. But since Almeida decided to join us, and I would definitely take Almeida over MDS, because with what Almeida has done with Chivas and all the things that he has done to revive bad club. I mean, I kind of mentioned this before, but now I think if they get MDS, I think it will also be a good fit for them, because MDS, he knows how to get teams that is bad to bring them back to being a good kind of side. And it'll be interesting to see if they, of course, would get him, or they'll probably get some other manager. So far, they haven't really announced who exactly is going to be the replacement of Carl Robinson, and I expect them to continue that search throughout the offseason. I don't think they're going to just straightly announce who is going to be the new manager. Not like what the Quakes does. The Quakes, the reason why the Quakes decided to do that is because it's such a big kind of managerial kind of announcement that they just could not hold back. And when you look at what happened during that time when we got Almeida, I don't blame the Quakes for not have to wait till the off season before announcing that, because that is just a big kind of managerial kind of appointment for us. But either way, that is pretty much it for my moving forward series for the Whitecaps. If you're a Whitecaps fan, what do you think of this? What do you think went wrong for your team? What do you think went right for your team? And moving forward, what do you think this team is gonna be? And I think the most important question is that can they able to find a way where they can get enough pieces to replace Alphonso Davies, because Alphonso Davies was just so important to this team. Now that they don't have them, it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to try to replace him. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.